12 o'clock, and I'd like to invite everyone here to our May 10th workshop. This is a workshop. You don't need to stand.
I know I was going to go stretching.
All right, Earl wanted to stretch a little bit, and
Go, go.
we really appreciate that. And we're a little bit more laid back when it comes to the workshops, and we have today on our agenda, we have a presentation for the Town of Elkton Water Infrastructure Overview. Grant Hanley. Now, Grant, you're going to tell us a little bit what got you excited about doing, I guess, a thesis on our infrastructure. You might want to pull the mic closer to you, too.
Hello. I'm going to stand if that's okay.
Okay, that's perfect.
Let me just make sure this is all set up the way I want it to be, and then we'll get going.
Looks like some good stuff on that email.
It's just Jeff Grice. Pretty boring.
And Grant, I'm gonna try to delete that. I don't think that I can bring that completely away. So that might be on the right side of your presentation, but.
That's okay. That'd be good.
Since you're standing.
And
Face that
Grant,
mic up.
when you're ready, pick that mic up so you, there you go.
Ah, nice. All right. Is it at the newer homes? Makes my son. They want to slow down a little bit. The other was big.
I like that disclaimer.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're not responsible for anything you say or do.
Can't mess up the government.
Yeah.
You got the copy of the presentation?
Sorry, guys. One second.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's fine. There you go. That's awesome.
Cool. So we'll settle for that. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time today. I know what you guys do is really important, really valuable. So I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'm going to have a little timer set for me too, just so I can kind of keep track of everything. And let's get into it.
Who are you?
That's a good question. Who am I, folks? My name is Grant Hanley. I'm a Master's of Public Policy student. I'll be graduating with my degree in policy in about 2 weeks here, and we're all required to have a thesis presentation where we have some sort of policy client, and we really take a deep dive into an issue. So the issue I chose was the town of Elkton water infrastructure for a couple of reasons. One, I found at my time at the University of Maryland, a lot of people really, really loved taking on like global warming, taking on climate change, and all these really big, hot-button issues. But kind of thanks to my background and my relationship with several people that work in local government, I decided I wanted to take a deep dive in something that kind of affects us every day, and that is the quality of water and the access to water in our local government. One of the terms that we had used throughout our course was water infrastructure maybe not be a sexy issue. It's not something you see on the news headlines, it's not something you see debated at presidential debates, but I do think it is something that is really important and critical every day to Elkton citizens and citizens across the United States. So that was my topic. I worked for Elkton Parks and Recreation for 5 years. My father, as you all know, is Dan Hanley, DPW director. So I've had a nice connection with the town of Elkton for a long time. So being able to choose this and work with you guys and some people I'll explain next slide has really been an honor and a pleasure. Before we hop into it, I do want to disclaim, I'm going to talk about water infrastructure, where we're at with it, and what needs to be done. This is all from an academic standpoint, and this was a report that I put together and a presentation that I put together in a matter of anywhere from 8 to 9 months. With that being said, I'm not a practitioner from day to day, I'm not an expert on the field, and my recommendations, I'm hoping, will spur conversation and spur thinking. I'm not here to tell anybody how to do their job, or what they're doing is wrong, or what they're doing is right. This is merely an academic standpoint, using a lot of research and interviews that I've been utilizing throughout this report. So my data sources, just want to thank a couple people. Brian McQueen, give him a wave, Brian. There you go. Brian, logistics coordinator for DPW. Mark Turnbull is infrastructure coordinator for DPW. I'd like to thank KCI Engineering. I'd like to thank the town of Elkton for all of their support and resources that I've utilized throughout this, and the University of Maryland College Park Libraries. The libraries was a critical component to conduct my literature review, which was necessary for this report. And I do have the full report that I'd be happy to give at the end of the presentation if you guys need it. It's just really lengthy, and this might be more fun for you guys. Also, shout out to my dad. Without him, I wouldn't care about any of this stuff. All right, motivation. Water infrastructure in the United States. It's bad, folks. It's really bad. The American Society of Civil Engineering reported an overall grade of C- for American water infrastructure. On average, there is a water main break that occurs every 2 minutes, and that leads to 6 billion gallons of treated water wasted daily. Okay? We have these things happening, and no one really seems to be that interested because it is not a very high leverage issue. It is not a popular issue. So we have these things occurring, and it just gets ignored. Why are water main breakages bad for the town of Elkton? One, it's expensive. You have to fix it, and that costs a lot of time and money that we'll get into. Two, it leads to water outages. Our citizens are now being withheld water access, and it contributes to the town of Elkton's water loss percentage, which is at roughly 28%, whereas the average water loss percentage for most municipalities, or the goal, should be 15%. So your water main breaks are playing a big role into that. So let's talk water. Let's look at the system. Well, you guys have a little shy of 1,300 Elkton residents relying on your water system. Okay? Your water comes from surface water from the Big Elk Creek and groundwater from the Potomac Aquifer below it. In total, you have 1,300 valves and 82 miles of pipe. What do those mean and what do those do? We'll hop into it and look at it later. What we're looking at right here is a typical water pipe. Okay, just a couple things to point out. That brand new shiny piece of metal, that is the new connecting replacement pipe that is used when a pipe is broken. The brown, dilapidated looking pipe to the right is old galvanized piping. And then that copper line is the service line that connects the water mains to the house. And then, as you can see above all that, is just a bunch of soil, sediments, and rocks that play a large factor into the breakages of pipes. And we'll get into that later as well. So what causes these breakages? One, it's sedimentation. All right? The weight and movement of the dirts, the sediments, the rocks, anytime there's always constant shifting of our tectonic plates, there's always shifting of the ground above due to driving or construction or what have you. It's shaking those dirts and rocks, and it's damaging the pipes. Okay? You combine that with soil acidity. The soil here in the whole Mid-Atlantic region of the United States has some sort of acidity to it. And over the years and 100+ years of wear and tear, the soil will eat at the pipe, making it very sensitive to breaking. And finally, what tends to be the biggest cause of these water main breaks, or at least kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, is our temperature changes, okay? So just like erosion with a rock, when it's freezing temperature, water will freeze, expand the cracks within the pipe, and then it'll get warm temperatures again, so the ice melts, and now you have this expanded crack that is now about to burst. So all these factors kind of lead to the breakages that the town of Elkton is experiencing every day, okay? There's 47 breakages in 2021, and this is kind of an iconic photo that you can find at Elkton DPW, and this is some of the things that they struggle with, and just a good action shot of what they're dealing with.
That's a copyright infringement.
Okay, please. Forget you saw that. Forgot you never saw that photo.
Because I took that.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Credit to
How about this?
Mr. Lewis. So let's get down to cost, okay? Looking at the first chart, these are fixed one-time investments, meaning you're buying them one time and you'll get a long shelf life out of them. But I still think there's some validity to looking at what this could look like. You're talking backhoes and Vector trucks, the equipment for the Vector trucks, the supplies that you have to use per break, concrete saws, jumping jacks. I mean, this is a pretty expensive ordeal, okay? It costs a lot of money. And while you get this over a span of a lot of years, you have to see that a lot of equipment will go into this type of repair. And then your variable costs are costs that are going to cost the town every time there is a break. You have to look at the manpower. It's typically a team of anywhere of 6 to 8 employees per repair. And a lot of these times, these water main breaks happen at really inconvenient times, like at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night. So now your pay rate's going at time at least 1.5, pay raise, or 2 times pay raise if it's a holiday and things like that. Time and a half is typically what is being paid. Water outages, okay, that may not have a financial value, but you're talking 4 to 8 hours of no water access to a specific area. And I imagine that's wildly inconvenient and upsetting to most constituents. So this is what I would spend the bulk of our time, is solutions, okay? It's costly, it's happening, and it's a problem. So what can the town do to fix it, given your finite resources and given the finite amount of human capital you have? Everybody, this is a map. This is a map of the town of Elkton's water system, and as you can see, there are 5 zones, and this is every region and jurisdiction that is underwater, or Elkton's water distribution. When we zoom in onto the key here, we will see there's a couple things that are interesting, but I want you to focus on 2. One is the zones. We have Grace Hill all the way through Walnut Hill, and then 2 will be this little icon here, the water valve. Okay, the water valve is this circle with an X, and why is that relevant? We'll get into that in the next few slides, but it's important to tee it up because I'm going to tell a story. Okay? Mayor Alt, let's say Mayor Alt lives on Road 10. And I know he doesn't, but in this hypothetical he does. Well, a water main break happens, and now there's water gushing everywhere, and it's a huge problem. So once Elkton DPW gets the call, they call Miss Utility or whoever, and they have to wait some time for utilities to come and mark things up so Elkton DPW doesn't strike a gas main and make things way worse. So utility has come, and now we're at Road 10, and in order to make the repair, to access the water valve, or access the water pipe that's broken, you have to shut off the water. Because you can't dig and dig and dig and make the repair when you have high pressurized water gushing everywhere, especially at you. So to shut off the water, you use something called a valve, okay? And a valve is just like these iron-looking gates that you put down, and it stops the connection, so now there's no water flowing, and you can make the repair. Well, the problem is, as I said earlier, there's 1,300 valves, and a lot of these valves are inoperable, they're not working, they're too rusty, they haven't been used enough, and they don't work. So this happens more often than you think. Mayor Alt lives in Road 10, but that valve isn't working. The crew can't use the valve, so the water is still gushing everywhere. So now they have to go to their nearest valve from Road 10. So they come to Road 8 and use these valves. Well, as you would have it, those valves aren't operable. They're becoming a problem. So now you're going all the way to Road 6 to use this valve to shut it off, and you're expanding the amount of people who are having inaccess to water, all because your valves aren't working. It's frustrating, because you're taking something you could easily isolate, and you're expanding it by 2 or 3 times because your valves aren't working properly. It's a huge problem. So there's 1,300 valves in the system, and it's not a matter of, well, let's just replace all the valves, because that costs about $15,000 for a valve replacement. And this is local government. What are we going to do? Increase taxes by 1,000% to finance that? That's not feasible. It's not going to happen. So our 2 problems are, one, it's impractical and it's expensive to replace every broken valve on a grand scale. And really, that shouldn't be necessary anyway if we can just take care of the system that we already have. And 2, sometimes it's a little bit of a guessing work of what valves work and which valves do not. I mean, imagine yourself waking up at 4 in the morning, you're on call, there's water gushing everywhere, it's February, it's freezing cold, you're trying to shut off you're trying to use the right valve to shut off the water, and it becomes a little bit frustrating. It becomes a bit of a guessing game. Which valve can I use to shut it off? It's not a perfect science, and it's something that should and could be mapped out better. So here's the solution, guys. We're gonna do something called exercising the valves, okay? And exercising the valves just simply means we can get one person, most likely in the DPW department, to go to every valve in the system and just turn it up, turn it on. Get the gate up, get the gate on. It's kind of like shaking off the rust of something that hasn't been used in a while. Or if you have like a bike chain, slowly getting it moving, getting it going. Exercising these valves is just a good way of maintaining an aging system, okay? As you see, these things can be costly, and we need to try to preserve what we already have. So exercising them, moving them, will be good for two reasons. One, it's good to give the maintenance to the valve. If the valve is already working, you're playing with it, you're just keeping it moving, keeping it lubricated, keeping it what it needs to be doing. Now you can expand its shelf life so it doesn't go inoperable on you when you need it the most. Two, you'll then have precise mapping of each valve. Okay, if you have a map of exactly every valve, which DPW has, they know where all the valves are, but sometimes it becomes a guessing game of which valve is working today and which one isn't. So if you exercise every valve, you then can mark out pretty precisely which ones aren't working and which ones are. So if it's 4 a.m. and it's a February cold morning and you got to deal with this, now you have a resource where you can look at, well, valve by road 8 is not working, valve by road 9 is not working, let's start at road 6 and we can just expedite this process. Let's be more efficient. Let's decrease the amount of water outages that there are. That's short term, okay? And here's kind of a mock-up, all right? So we have the 5 zones: Walnut Hill, Town, Holly Hall, Grays Hill, and Route 279, okay? Ideally, you would internally conduct the exercising of the valves. This would be good because the only costs that are then associated is you're just paying the wages for the employees' time to do this. Anytime you're talking about contracting or going external, your costs are going to go way up. It's up to DPW leadership and town leadership how you want to do it, but let's see if I can do this. Okay, it's not, whatever. There's some years that you'll save, but it's getting blocked by the Zoom thing. But it was just kind of a mock-up of, if you try to do 200 to 300 exercise per year, what valves would you start with, okay? And Walnut Hill and the town zones were typically your biggest culprits of problems with valves being issues. So it would be up to Elkton leadership and DPW leadership or how they want to pursue it. But if you feel like you couldn't do all 1,300 valves in 1 year, you could break it down to a zone basis and you target your problem areas first. Target your problem child. So let's talk about long-term, okay? I think the valve replacement has a lot of validity, and I think it's important for exercising the valves to maintain what we have. But it's putting a Band-Aid approach to a pretty complicated problem. So let's talk about fixing it in the long term. In 2017, Elkton DPW replaced about 400 feet of pipe, which is about like 0.12 of a mile on Pennsylvania Avenue. Okay, that is just the site map there. If you see it, it's right below the park circle. And basically, DPW had assessed, okay, this thing is consistently bursting and giving us problems. Let's just replace the whole thing. Let's just knock it out and see if we can do that. So it ended up costing the town about $130,000. After discussions with KCI Engineering, Town of Elkton DPW, I was using sources from my literature review that looked at different water journals, such as Fort Wayne, Indiana, such as the whole New England area, and all these different water providers that assess costs and make estimates. We have figured out that one of the best options today is to create a long-term master plan to replace pipes within the town of Elkton, okay? And it would be a 100-year master plan. And we'll kind of get into what that looks like from a year-to-year approach, but it is the best practice that water providers are doing in the Mid-Atlantic region. The whole Northeast Mid-Atlantic region all has the same issue. All of their pipes were installed in the 1920s, 1930s. They're all suffering from a system that is giving out at the same time, and you can only do this Band-Aid approach of just fixing the broken piece, and let's fix this broken piece and this broken piece. It's going to consistently be a problem. And water main breaks are increasing year after year. So the town of Elkton has 82 miles of water infrastructure, 82 miles of pipe. If you want to replace all of that in 100 years, you're talking about 0.80 miles of pipe being replaced a year, okay? In the span of 100 years, the estimate cost will be $1 million annually to do that. And we'll break into if that's feasible or not in a second. And this is all given current technologies. Given what the town has, given what other municipalities and water providers have, if we were to take on this issue today, and we use what we have today, this is the approach. Maybe in 20 years, Mayoral invents the water fixer pipe, and you have a different approach. But I do think there is some validity into looking at this right now. Okay, so 100 years is certainly a long time, and whether it's hard to say if the town can commit to that, it is worth trying an approach in your problem areas for a while. So this is kind of a prioritization table, okay, where you're looking at your problem areas. Cast iron pipes and iron pipes are the worst, okay? They came in the 1920s. Their lifespan is roughly 100 years, and if you do the math, it has been 100+ years since we've had that in the system, and they're very prominent in the town zone. Okay, ductile iron can be a problem. They came into the 40s and 50s, and they're also prevalent in the town. And then we just have PVC and other types of piping that are typically least priority. They're not breaking as much, but they are something that is comprised of in the town. So just want to talk about feasibility here, because for me to come and say, oh, we'll just replace all of our pipes over the next 100 years, that seems like a pretty crazy thing to pitch to you guys. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. Well, first of all, how do you guys pay for anything water? And the answer to that is your water fund, okay? Your water fund is an asset to have and utilize when it comes to everything water main replacement and water focused. Your water hookup fees right now are roughly at $15,000. It might be water and sewer, or it could just be water. But regardless, it's $15K for a hookup, okay? Now, it is my understanding a couple years ago, to spur more growth and development, that those water hookup fees were waived. They were paused, okay? They were paused in the hopes of spurring more people coming, spurring more development, and I think that has certainly happened. And you guys are getting these great developments and getting these great projects. But when we talk about Southfields and we talk about these other opportunities for the town, we could be looking at a gold mine here, or at least a great resource for the water fund when it comes to reinstating these water hookup fees. If we were looking at the water fund revenue the past 3 or 4 years, it has not been growing. The expenses and the revenues have been equating each other and canceling out. So the water fund current budget was $3.4 million. That was the budget for this upcoming year. And then the year prior to that, it was budgeted maybe around 3.1, and then 3.1 was roughly spent. So there is no compiling, there is no Easter egging where you could grow your water fund and use your water fund to finance this long-term plan of replacing your pipes. Okay, so we're just going to kind of put a pin in that and see if there's other funding opportunities we can use. Grant opportunities. The government is our friend. We like grants, but unfortunately, even under President Biden's Build Back Better initiatives, and even with the Maryland Department of Environment's initiatives, all water funding grants are about water quality. It's all about, can you drink the water and not get sick? And that's not really a problem here. There are not many governmental entities that are interested in footing the bill for water distribution systems, for water piping and water mains. And that's a huge problem, because what that is basically saying is, we're kind of on our own. I've done extensive research, and I tried to find grants, and it's really all about water quality at this time. Then there's the potential for contractor bulk pricing, okay? If we take on this 100-year plan, or at least you maybe take it on 5 years at a time, or 2 or 3 years at a time, at a roughly $1 million per bid, you know, that's pretty lucrative for any sort of contractor to look at and consider. And if we give them multi-year contracts, or maybe we'll do 0.80 in 2024, 0.80 in 2025, 0.80 in 2026, I mean, a $3 million bid, maybe there's some sort of price negotiation there because they're being guaranteed some pretty lucrative work over the next couple of years. And then the final thing to consider is just the political dynamics, okay? We have a great Elkton government, okay? We have 4 commissioners, 1 mayor, and it's all about easing the burden on town residents. When I make this pitch, I'm not saying let's increase taxes, let's increase the daily burden on citizens in the town of Elkton. Let's not make their life any harder than it needs to be. So when we look at all these things, really what's killing you guys is the water fund just being starved, and the water fund not having the funding it could need or utilize, especially with all this new development coming in. So my recommendation in my final pitch is I think we need to reinstate the water fund. And if we want to talk about equity and what that looks like, 15K is a lot of money. I hate to pay that right now. It's really bumming out. But maybe there's some sort of equity approach for how we do that, or some sort of breakdown if we don't want to punish low-income residents. But if we're having a future of wonderful development, the wonderful complexes and parks coming, they're going to need water hookups, and we need revenue so we can fix some seriously dilapidated water infrastructure. I think that there's something to consider. I don't work at the town every day, and I don't know the ins and outs of what you guys have to deal with, but from my perspective as a researcher on this for the past year, and just with my talks with KCI and other people, I do think it's something that should be considered, or some other funding revenue. But to replace .80 pipes every year for the next 100 years, it is something to consider. And in reality, it's probably something that only actually happens for 20 years. Okay, so let's say for the next 20 years, we do this approach. Well, now you've really fixed your worst problem child's of piping. For the past 20 years, you've replaced roughly 20 miles of pipe, and typically that is going to be our worst high priority. We need to fix this pipe. And then all of a sudden, this new technology comes, and we scrap this whole thing. Okay, but now what we've done is we've fixed the problem areas, and if there is no new natural technology, which doesn't exist right now, then we still have a plan to slowly fix water infrastructure without necessarily breaking the bank. But in order to not break the bank, we do have to be nice to our water fund. So looking forward and wrapping up, everything I've said today and have shared, whether it is exercising the valves so our valves work better, or talking about the problems that the town suffers from, or talking about the potential of long-term investment in pipes, it is not town of Elkton exclusive. This is not a problem for you 5 alone. This is happening in every municipality in Cecil County, it's happening in every municipality in the state, and it's happening in every municipality through the entire East Coast, at least, if not the rest of the nation. Okay? Using best practices and talking, when you guys go to MML, when you guys go to NACO, and you're learning, this is something that should be shared. New technology, new ideas, and new approaches and discussions about water infrastructure should happen. You know, it is not a fun issue, and fixing it is going to be really inconvenient. All it's going to do is create a bunch of like construction and shut down things, and people will probably be mad at you. But it's something that needs to happen, or at least needs to be thought about. I'd be happy to field any questions at this time. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys agreeing with me.
Grant, thank you so much. You did a great job. I do have a question for you. Now, during your research, when you were looking at like the cast iron pipes and the iron pipes and the ductile iron pipes, I believe we're still using ductile iron.
So you use cement line ductile iron pipe, class 52, and that's a very top of the line type of pipe.
I mean,
You wouldn't use that pipe, the cement line.
Ductile now isn't necessarily the issue. It's ductile in the 1940s that is the issue.
Gotcha.
And that's what that table is showing.
you know, you gave me, of course, we all know that when we have these, a lot of it's the earth moving, it's the freezing and so forth, and, you know, I'm coming through, I'm trying to think of inventions for this. You know, if there was a way that you could almost insulate the pipe in some way as you bury it, and create some type of cushion movement, like an expansion joint in there in some way, it may make longer life without the.
It's funny you say that, because I thought about that a couple years ago when I was looking at this issue way less in depth for another course, and I entertained the idea of like a pipe insulation. And those technologies exist to an extent, but your primary issue is the pipe that's already in the ground,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, they're not insulated.
You can't,
Right.
you can't. Maybe in the future, as you put them in, maybe there's a.
Right, and that's a lot of validity there.
Well, thank you. Any questions for Grant? As a teacher, Charlie, would you give him a grade on this?
That was excellent.
All
I've
right.
got a question or
We
two.
learned a lot here.
Could you give us a breakdown on how you come to $13,000 to $15,000
For valve,
per valve?
that was just,
It seems like a lot of money for, just to dig it up. I mean, I know that there's a salary and parts and everything, but it seems like a lot.
yeah, it's the valve itself that is costing a lot of that money. And I generated that number through talking with KCI and then through researching through like community libraries. I think it was Fort Wayne, Indiana, is replacing all of their valves in their system. That is an approach they're taking, and they've found that costly around like $13,000.
The cost of the valves.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They're pretty critical technology.
And is there anything more to exercising the valves than merely moving them up and down? I mean, you have to move them up with WD-40, or just for instance, is there something more to it than just exercising them?
Yeah, I imagine it might not be as simple as just wiggling it, and there might be some lubricating process. I didn't take a deep dive into the approach of valves, but if that was the approach you guys took, I imagine there might be like an additional step or two, but nothing crazy costly or obscene.
Mhm. The only other thing I made a note about was you mentioned that Walnut Hill was one of our problem areas. Is there a particular reason for that? Are we using a different type of pipe up there? It's not one of our older developments.
Yeah, just from an anecdotal, from anecdotal evidence and story evidence, talking to like Mark Turnbull and things like that, they were just like, for some reason, valves and Walnut was giving us a hard time. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to
But
that.
we really don't
Yeah.
know.
A lot of times, the service line valves, actually, the service line that goes to a house, because the yoke might deteriorate, like, as he said, with acid, breaks loose. It's not that valve in the middle of the street on the main,
But the service line
it's
running
the
to the
service
house.
line. Because I've been up there several times, where they replace those.
And then the citizen would be responsible for that, right?
No, we do it, they're in the road. Actually, it's up to the main.
It's in the road.
Yeah. You got a picture of the service lines connected to a thing in the.
Yeah, I can pull it up if you want.
No, not that one.
That copper line looking thing.
That's what, actually where it's attached to the main, there's a yoke that holds it. We use stainless steel ones now, I think, right, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Nice.
a lot of the older mains or ronds or whatever, they deteriorated from the acidic soil and fall out, and then next thing you know, you gotta go back, dig the whole street up and fix it. I don't mean to interrupt your.
No.
theory on there.
So I wanted to mention to you that we had reinstated the major hookup fees, the major facility costs. And we did that a little over a year ago. And we're just waiting for the spurt of growth
Right.
to happen. And you're 100% right. When we implemented it, we did it for trying to get some of the areas of town that needed to show some growth. And then the goal here is once you have 300 new homes and 300 new apartments, the water usage
Right, the water bill.
will increase, and that's what will help drive it. Now, I can tell you something that you could add to your, is that our water rates are probably too low at this point, because we did give our residents a huge discount over the last 7 or 8 years, and we just got an increase from Artesian for the water we pull from them is more than what we're charging our residents. So we got to make an adjustment here soon on that too. But it was a great presentation.
Mhm.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Grant.
I have a question. Do you think people take water usage for granted?
100%. I mean, 100%. How many times do you leave your shower running or just think, you don't really think about it?
Don't fix your toilet.
Right, right. Or toilets will phantom flush, whatever, you know. It's not a, yeah, 100%.
So with that being said on your part, then people might be inclined to pay a few cents for an increase in rent.
Yeah, I think that would be a good logic.
And I look at that, a couple of things that we do in Elkton. I mean, I think you could raise trash fees because people know I got trash, I accumulate it every day, it's gotta go someplace. The same thing with water, I wash with it, I cook with it, just a number of things. So those are some telltale signs, I guess, that you could always raise it a few cents, Mayor, and people won't bite you.
No, I agree with you. It always comes down to the real estate tax that hits you.
It's tricky. I don't think any board wants to be the board to increase costs for anything, or increase the amount of construction in your town. But this is a long-term investment that will go way beyond your guys' legacy and hopefully even mine. So, really appreciate it again, guys. This is a topic I think is super interesting, and really it only scratched the surface. I saw Ryan Clippinger was on the Zoom call, I believe. Just want to really thank him. He was great with a lot of information, and really thank what you guys do every day. I think local government's awesome. It's critical, and maybe it's not on everyone's radar.
So you're gonna present your information to,
Tomorrow, I actually go to the University of Maryland, and I'll present the same thing a little bit.
so what's gonna be your audience?
Just, fellow master's students that are about to graduate. Like we all have to do a thesis, so it's just mine.
But I'm saying you're gonna have an audience to evaluate it, and the audience gonna look at just how it's been.
They're just gonna look at it. I don't think there's any formal, like it gets graded, but there's no expert evaluating it from like a substance perspective. It's more of like an academic perspective.
Very good.
I just want to comment on the presentation. It was well given, delivered very well. I picked up a lot of information. I don't know what kind of grading scale they would give you, but I would suggest you get a copy of this video, take it with you tomorrow, and show that before you give your presentation, and say your audience was here, and I gave you an A.
I appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we have nothing else on the agenda today. I wanted to mention to the board that on Monday is the Economic Summit, which will be here starting at 9 a.m. on Monday, and it's going to last till lunchtime, till noon. And we're going to provide some sandwiches afterwards, but just to let the board know, I'll send them out. We'll send out the agenda to the whole board. But I'm going to do the opening at 9 a.m. I've got the planning department overview of projects, of jobs that we've done in the town since 2010. We've asked KCI to give us the April summary. The Elkton Alliance Hartford Bank, Danielle is the president of the Elkton Alliance. I wanted her to come in just to say a few words. I've got the Cecil County Chamber, Megan McCrae is going to come in and say a few words. I've got the Great Wolf Lodge, Nadine Miracle is going to be coming in to give us a presentation on the Great Wolf Lodge itself. Cushman Wakefield is going to have a little discussion in regards to what they see in the commercial industrial world here in Elkton. We've got Sideline Properties, with John Campus is going to give a presentation on the sports project and so forth. And Leading Design and Development Company, they're the ones that is doing a lot of the visual work. They're going to give a presentation, and then probably the most important thing that we need is the Sports Facilities Company, who's going to be doing it has done the feasibility study on sports tourism here in Elkton. And then Cecil County Economic Development Director William Sorensen is going to speak to us in regards to indirect, what direct and indirect funding is, and he's going to give us a recap of Cecil County sports tourism feasibility that they just recently did. And then Mesero, Chris Sheenan, if we had any questions about bonding issues and so forth, he would be here for that, and then we're gonna wrap it up and then have lunch. So hopefully, the game plan out of this is to make sure that we're all understanding of what type of impact this project can mean to not only our town, but the county and even the state. And I don't want to take away a lot of the Great Wolf Lodge information they're going to give, but I think you're going to be very impressed with her presentation, which actually marries with what we're doing. John, you were calling me. Did you need me?
No, I put that.
Oh, okay. I said,
I was
what's
looking at my
John?
calendar for next Monday.
Oh, are you? You were calling me. I'm thinking, what's John? Am I saying something I'm not supposed to say here?
Sorry.
With that, does the board have anything?
No, I'll have to sneak out of that meeting for maybe 30 minutes. I have a new kidney doctor who has been replaced in this area. Dr. Gavin, who's been here forever and a day, is leaving. Matter of fact, he left once. He unretired and came back, but there's actual new kidney doctor coming to the hospital, so I just walk across.
Very good.
Secondly, our pastor, as I mentioned before, Reverend Brown will be departing Rights Church after this coming Sunday. It's been mind-boggling with the tears and everything, particularly after you have a pastor 10 years at your church, and certainly there's been major changes there. And of course, yesterday he was calling the hospital union board to, turn in his resignation and to a lot of boards he's on around here, so that would be there in place. So on the 17th, Michelle, perhaps we can have one of your templates actually made, or we can sign whatever it needs to be.
Are you in that area to still support the,
No, and I don't know what's gonna happen with that school at this point, because I know the town of Elkton was instrumental in him getting things, has been going along a little slow, have not even got keys to go in there yet, because you gotta make sure that the boiler work, and Cross Brothers is in the process of taking care of that. And you've been waiting for all these grants with all these politicians promise you, and you see nothing in the mail. So at this point, I don't know what's gonna happen with that, but I keep those informed.
Okay, do we need to have any discussion on anything else, Lou, here today? I know we have a couple healthcare questions.
No, I think Andy had recommended Cigna as equivalent to
Did
the
you want
Aetna,
to watch the
and
meeting and
going
talk
in
about
at
I think we
8%
talk
or
to them
something.
after the meeting. We'll just talk to you after the meeting one-on-one.
It's not,
All right, anyone have anything for the good of the town of Elkton?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, sir.
I gave you a picture of the base of the water tower.
Yes, it's
It's
sitting right
coming right
here.
along. I was out there today, Johnson Construction, putting that base in, and they probably will be done in a week or two. And then CB and I will come in and start the structure. So we'll go out, I'll take a picture of the first piece of metal going down on that base.
You know, it'd be pretty unique if you could take a picture every day, because,
Well, I will, I
Yeah.
usually do. And then when I was down there talking to the foreman, he was all excited because we're gonna have the baseball on that,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
So excited about seeing that.
Pretty exciting.
It's a very exciting project,
yes, thank you.
Do we have any properties, with waivers for hookup fees right now, like in the wings?
We do.
Who?
DH Ford.
We'll talk about. Yeah, there's a few.
After we did,
We did it in the meeting. Okay.
And the last thing is, the Senso de Maya downtown on Friday night was very interesting. I guess it's their first time actually being down there. They danced, they served food, they had exhibits. It was amazing. And it wasn't a big thing. It was enough for them to be happy and proud.
It was very nice, I have to tell you. It was a nice event downtown.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed it.
It was very nice.
I was out of town.
Yeah. You have anything? You're all good? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.